I debated whether to make this video on this channel today. So on a popular website under a children's book published decades ago, recent customer review writes, "Not dark but delightful." Another says, "Fun to read down generations, a real laugh out loud." This book is in its blatants, The Three Gollywalks. For some, it's a harmless relic of childhood, a simple toy, but Gollywog is not a simple character. It is a direct descendant of the 19th century minstrel show of grotesque character with jet black skin, exaggerated red lips, and wild hair designed to mock and dehumanize Black people. For over a century, it was a staple of British and colonial culture, embedding the idea of blackness as absurd, primitive, and laughable in the minds of children. The only review that I agree with on this is from this person saying, "This is not okay." This is the fracture. This is the ongoing war over narrative. On one side, a longing for a sanitized past where racism was quaint and contained in a children's book. On the other, the lived reality of people who understand that these characters are not just memories, they are blueprints. They are the psychological conditioning that makes the unimaginable acceptable. That brings me to this morning, what we have seen posted by the President of the United States of America. While one part of the internet debates whether Gollywog is delightful or disgusting, the president shares a video depicting former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama as dancing apes. You can't even make this up. Now, these aren't two separate events. These are the same event, separated by centuries. One is the nursery rhyme, the other is the political quote-unquote meme, but both use the same weapon, animalization, the deliberate stripping of human identity to render people laughable, then threatening, then ultimately disposable. Now, the White House will call this a staffer error. The apologists will call it a political stunt. But when you look at the archive, from Gollywog to on the nursery shelf to the apes on the leader screens, you see the pattern. You see the strategy, right? Today, we're not just going to analyze the social media posts. We're going to dissect the persistent psychological blueprint of racism and how it is constantly repackaged for a new generation. You know, there are moments in history where things are so violently absurd, they feel like a tear in reality, a glitch in the matrix of power. Although the image is now long deleted like a toxin, it is already in the bloodstream of the national psyche. It was released during Black History Month, a period of forced and fragile celebration. To the passive observer, as I said, it's a distasteful joke, right? To the media pundit, a political stunt. But to the historians of psychology, to the scholars of genocide studies, this is the activation of centuries-old weapon, animalization. For over 400 years, this specific metaphor, the Negro ape, has been used to build a psychological reality that Black bodies are suited for labor, not liberty. That Black minds possesses instinct, not intellect, right? And Black pain is irrelevant because Black life is subhuman. Now, let us excavate the why. Why an ape? This is not a random malice. It is deliberate, historical callback. It roots in the scientific racism. Mind you, this movement was born in the Enlightenment shadow. So in the 18th century, Carl Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy, has classified humans into variants, describing Homo sapiens after Afars or Africans with descriptors like crafty, indolent, negligent, and governed by caprice. So this wasn't observation, it was an ideology dressed as science. So by the 19th century, it had evolved into a full industry of justification. Figures like Josiah Knight and George Gildon published types of mankind, using distorted craniometry and fabricated illustrations to position the African race as the missing link between Europeans and primates. This basically served as a critical economical purpose, moral anesthesia. If you can convince the populace and, more importantly, lawmakers that and the slave catcher that Africans are biologically closer to beast of burden than a brother, than the auction block, the whip, the lynching tree, the breeding farm, are not atrocious. They are simple form of management. The ape metaphor was the psychological keynote of the entire slave economy. When the president shares this imagery in 2026, he's not just being edgy, he's not just being blunt, right? He's not just an old man, out of his, whip's end. He is reaching directly into the 19th century toolbox. He is whispering a subtext to his followers, validated, magas validated by centuries of pseudoscience. Your fear is biological. Your disdain is rational, right? They are not like us. Pretty much. Kendrick Lamar put it perfectly. Now, the profound danger here is not about the offense, it's about the cognitive priming, the psychological process of preparing the mind to accept a specific reality, right? Research, such as the landmark studies from Stanford University, shows that implicit bias is not abstract. Participants, including those who profess egalitarian beliefs, were significantly faster at associating black faces with ape-like words than white faces. More critically, follow-up studies demonstrated a terrifying casual link. When people are sublimely primed with ape imagery before reading about a police altercation with a black suspect, they are more likely to justify the officer's offense, the officer's violence, and view the suspect as more threatening and less human. This is the bridge between a meme and a murder. The psychological priming creates the social permission for violence. It is the same mechanism that followed lynch mob to pose for photographs with their quote unquote again subhuman victims, right? It is the mechanism that allows viewers to see a man kneeling, with a knee on his neck and wonder, what did he do wrong? George Floyd and many others. This is the direct empirical connection to stimulus crackdown on journalists like Georgia Fort in Minnesota and Don Lemon. Animalization requires a vacuum of counter-narrative. If the people who can name the strategy can scream, "This is a centuries-old trope," are silenced, arrested, or discredited, then the dehumanization images settle into the public mind unchallenged. It becomes just another controversial opinion. If the most shielded black figures in America, the Obamas, can be reduced to primates, what mental category does the public reserve for black refugees, for the incarcerated youth, or the journalists asking tough questions? They become expendable fauna, right, in the landscape of power. Now, if we must confront the cruel genius of the timing, right, the first week of February, a month already compressed, commercialized, and contested, 28 days tasked with holding 400 plus years of complexity. To unleash this imagery now is a psychological power flex of the highest order, if you ask me. It is a message that says your designated month of celebration exists at my sufferance, right? I can at any moment resort to foundational myth about your subhumanity. It is designed to induce the W.E.B. Du Bois termed double consciousness, right? The sense of always looking at oneself through the eye of conspicuous world. If it forces the black viewers in a moment meant for pride to once again to see themselves as the other, as the beast in the white imagination. This is a classical tactic of psychological warfare, trauma bonding a people to their own degradation, right? So during a period of attempted, you can say, self-definition and whatnot, it hijacks to an extent, right? It hijacks the narrative. It ensures that the conversation is not about Black innovation, resilience, or freedom dreams, right? But once again, about Black pain and the relentless need to defend one's own humanity. It is exhausting as a tool of control. Now, before I conclude my rant or my analysis on this whole truth media post by the President of the United States, right, we must directly address the predictable cause of dismissals that will attempt to neutralize this analysis. Number one, it is a joke. Stop being so sensitive, right? We will hear that. This is the most insidious because it pathologizes the victim, right? It says the problem is not the violence of the imagery, but the weakness of those who recognize this violence. So history adjudicates this argument. The characters in Punch magazine that depicted the Irish as subhumans, apes, weren't just jokes. They justified famine policies. The Nazis' cartoons of the Jews as rats weren't just satire. They paved the way for the Holocaust. So when a joke relies on 400 plus year old history, right, crafted to enable mass murder, it stops being a joke. It's a propaganda. The second thing is that what about, X group? Everyone gets made fun of, right? This is false equivalence. The ape character is not a generic insult. It is specific, historically loaded technology of dehumanization with a documented body count. This is not equivalent to centuries long scientific. There is no equivalence. There's no equivalence of centuries long scientific and social campaign classifying other groups as literal primates to justify their enslavement and extermination. To claim otherwise is to erase a unique and documented history of anti-Blackness. Own that. The third dismissal is that it was just a staffer's mistake. Don't blame the president. No, this ignores the fundamental principle of command responsibility, right? The climate of any organization is set from the top. For years, this administration has trafficked in dehumanizing rhetorics. We know what they said about the Haitians. We know what they said about the Mexicans. And now we know what they have been saying about Blacks. But now, feign ignorance of its most infamous historical form. It's not plausible deniability. It is a strategic cowardice move, right? So the delete button was pressed not out of remorse. I'm going to say this again. They did not delete this, or he didn't delete this out of remorse, but because the weapon had already been deployed, the blast radius is the point. And they got the point. So the White House will blame Mustafa, right? The partisan media will debate political tone, and the dismissal will flow. But we must see this February 6th post for what it truly is. Not a mistake, but a revelation. It reveals the endgame trajectory we have been tracking. We have been knowing the silencing of the free press to create a vacuum, and then the floating of that vacuum with the oldest, most potent toxins of the American psyche. They are building a reality where cruelty becomes policy because it targets, the targets have been made in public mind, less than human. But here is the unaccessible truth that this weaponry fails to conquer. No algorithm of hate can compete the complexity of human spirit it tries to reduce, the Black spirit that it tries to reduce. So no AI generated character can erase a 500-year legacy of resilience, creativity, creativity and transcends humanity that has not only survived but shaped modern world. The president can delete the post, but he cannot delete the record, the historical record, the psychological record, or the moral record. Our task is to be the unsilenced voice, to name the weapon every single time it's drawn, to connect the digital meme to the historical nightmares, to see clearly, so we may defend fiercely. The president shared an image of apes. Our response must be thunderous, collective, reassertive of what it means to be human. Stay vigilant. So stay vigilant, stay grounded, stay connected, stay informed. I leave you all in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If this analysis provides value in dismantling the architecture of deception, be sure to subscribe, click that bell, and share this knowledge. It is our shared light we have to share light on the deliberate dark they're trying to bring. Once again, happy Black History Month. Until next time, assalamu alaikum.